The janitor whispered for words that made the mafia boss freeze. "There's a camera in your room." She pointed to a lens hidden above his bed, then walked away like she'd just mentioned a coffee stain. What he didn't know, his fiancée's family had been watching him for months, and the woman who cleaned his floors was the only one brave enough to tell the truth. The penthouse smelled like expensive leather and stale cigar smoke when Domenico Vero pushed through the double doors at 11:47 p.m. His shoulders ached. 3 days in Miami negotiating with suppliers who thought they could renegotiate terms mid-contract had left him with a headache that pulsed behind his right eye. He dropped his briefcase on the marble floor with a heavy thud. The cleaning crew scattered like roaches when light hits them.
He was used to that.
When you ran the East Coast's most profitable import business, people learned to disappear when you arrived. Fear was useful. Fear kept mouths shut and hands clean. But one person didn't run. A woman in a gray janitor's uniform stood near his bedroom door, holding a spray bottle in one hand and a microfiber cloth in the other. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and eyes that didn't flinch when they met his. "You're still here," Domenico said flatly, loosening his tie. "I am." Her voice was calm. Not defiant, not scared.
Just
present. He studied her for a moment. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than 3 seconds. She'd already passed 10. "You have 5 seconds to leave before I call security. There's a camera in your room." The words hung in the air like smoke. Domenico's hand froze on his collar. "What?" The woman pointed toward his bedroom. "Above your bed, right corner. There's a camera watching you." Every instinct in his body screamed trap. Setup.
Gone.
But something about the way she said it, like she was commenting on the weather, made him pause. He walked past her into the bedroom, his eyes scanning the ceiling. Nothing looked different. Same vaulted ceiling. Same ridiculous chandelier Miranda had insisted on installing last year. Same.
Wait. There.
A tiny red glimmer, barely visible, tucked into the decorative crown molding above the headboard. So small he'd never have noticed it if he wasn't looking. His blood went cold. Domenico grabbed the nearest chair, dragged it across the hardwood floor with a screech that made his teeth hurt, and climbed up. His fingers found the device immediately, a lens no bigger than a shirt button, mounted with industrial adhesive. He ripped it out. The camera was professional grade. Expensive. The kind you didn't buy at an electronics store. The kind that required expertise to install, and even more expertise to hide. Domenico jumped down from the chair, the device clenched in his fist. When he turned around, the janitor was standing in the doorway, watching him with that same unreadable expression. "How did you know?" His voice was low. "Dangerous. I've seen that model before." She gestured at the camera in his hand.
Nightai prosedm.
They sell them to private security firms, but mostly to people who want to spy without getting caught. Infrared night vision, motion-activated recording, wireless transmission. That one's probably streaming right now to whoever installed it. Domenico's jaw tightened. And how exactly does a janitor know all that? "Because I used to clean for people who used them." She met his eyes again. Rich people. Connected people. People who like to keep insurance on everyone around them. The room felt smaller suddenly. "Who sent you?" Domenico asked. "Nobody sent me. I work for the hotel. I was assigned to this floor 3 weeks ago." She crossed her arms. "But if you're asking who installed that camera, I have a pretty good guess." "Talk." "Not here." She glanced at the ceiling, then at the walls. "If there's one camera, there are probably more. And if they're watching, they're listening too." Domenico's pulse hammered in his ears. He'd survived 2 decades in a business where paranoia kept you alive, and he'd never, not once, been caught off guard like this. He stepped closer to her. "What's your name?"
Ivy.
"Ivy Sorrentino." "You're going to tell me everything you know?" "Ivy Sorrentino." "I will." She set the spray bottle down on his dresser. "But not while they're watching." She walked toward the door, calm as ever, like she hadn't just dropped a grenade in his life. "Wait," Domenico's voice stopped her. "Why tell me? You could have kept your head down, finished your shift, and walked away. Why risk this? Ivy turned back, and for the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not fear, not anger, something sadder. Because I know what happens when people collect footage like this, she said quietly. They don't use it to protect themselves. They use it to destroy you. And whatever you've done in your life, Mr. Vero, nobody deserves to be destroyed in their own bedroom. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Domenico stood alone in his penthouse, the tiny camera still warm in his palm, staring at the empty doorway where a janitor had just unraveled his entire sense of security. He looked back at the crown molding. If there was one camera, there were more. And if someone was watching him sleep, they were watching him do everything else too. His phone buzzed. A text from Miranda, his fiancée. Miss you already, baby. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. XO. Domenico stared at the message. Then he looked at the camera in his hand. And for the first time in 15 years, Domenico Vero felt something he'd trained himself never to feel.
Doubt.
Domenico didn't sleep. At 12:15 a.m., he made 3 phone calls. By 12:40 a.m., his private security team was at the penthouse door, for men he'd worked with for years, ex-military types who knew how to sweep a room and keep their mouths shut. Tony Marcello led the team. Broad-shouldered, gray-beard, with eyes that had seen too much. He walked in carrying a metal case full of detection equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. Dom, what's going on? Tony asked, setting the case on the coffee table. Domenico handed him the camera without a word. Tony's face went pale.
Jesus Christ.
Where'd you find this? Above my bed. Who installed it? That's what we're going to find out. Domenico gestured around the penthouse. Sweep everything. Every room. Every corner. I want to know if there's a single piece of tech in this place that doesn't belong to me. Tony nodded and signaled to his team. They moved through the penthouse like surgeons, methodical and silent. Thermal scanners swept the walls. RF detectors hummed, searching for wireless signals. They checked air vents, light fixtures, smoke detectors, even the underside of furniture. Domenico watched from the center of the living room, arms crossed, jaw clenched. 30 minutes in, one of Tony's men, Carter, a wiry guy with tattoos covering both arms, called out from the study. Got something. Everyone converged on the room. Carter pointed to a painting on the wall, an abstract piece Miranda had bought at an auction 6 months ago. Ugly thing. Domenico had never liked it. Carter carefully removed the painting. Behind it, mounted flush against the wall, was another camera. This one aimed directly at Domenico's desk, the place where he reviewed contracts, made phone calls, counted cash. Tony cursed under his breath. This one's newer, maybe 2 months old. Keep looking, Domenico said, his voice like gravel. 15 minutes later, they found the third camera. It was hidden inside the decorative wooden panel of the liquor cabinet, positioned at eye level. Whoever installed it had drilled a hole so precise, so clean, that it was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The lens had a direct view of the entire seating area, where Domenico hosted private meetings, where deals were made, where alliances were formed and broken. Tony held it up to the light. Same model. Same manufacturer. Night Eye Pro, 7, just like the first 1-inch. Are they connected? Domenico asked. Tony pulled out a tablet and ran a scan.
Yeah.
All 3 devices are transmitting on the same encrypted network. Whoever set this up knows what they're doing. The signal's bouncing through multiple relays. It'd take days to trace it back to the source. But it can be traced. Eventually. Yeah. Domenico walked to the window, overlooking the city. Manhattan sparkled below him. Millions of lights, millions of people, all living their small, insignificant lives. He'd built an empire in this city. Controlled streets, businesses, politicians. And someone had walked into his home and planted eyes in his walls. This shouldn't be possible, Tony said, joining him at the window. Your building has top-tier security. Biometric locks. Cameras in every hallway. How the hell did someone get past all that? Domenico turned to face him. The janitor knew. Tony frowned. What? A janitor found the first camera. Pointed it out to me like she was showing me a stain on the carpet. She knew the model, the manufacturer, how it worked. A janitor? Tony's suspicion was immediate. Dom, that sounds like... I know what it sounds like, Domenico cut him off. But she wasn't nervous. Wasn't trying to sell me anything or get something out of me. She just told me and left. You get her name? Ivy Sorrentino. Tony pulled out his phone and started typing. I'll run a background check. If she's involved. She's not involved, Domenico said, surprising himself with how certain he sounded. She's seen these cameras before. Said she used to clean for people who installed them. Tony looked up from his phone. What people? Domenico didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. Ivy had said she cleaned for people who used cameras as insurance.
Rich people.
Connected people. Miranda came from money. Old East Coast money, the kind that smiled at charity galas and hid knives behind their backs. Her family had ties to politicians, judges, real estate moguls. They played the game differently than Domenico did.
Cleaner.
More sophisticated. More dangerous. Run the check, Domenico said finally. But quietly. I don't want anyone knowing we're looking. Tony nodded. What about the cameras? You want us to disable them? Domenico thought about it. If he shut the cameras down, whoever was watching would know he'd found them. They'd scatter, cover their tracks, maybe even accelerate whatever plan they had in motion. But if he left them running... Leave them, Domenico said. For now. You sure? If they want to watch me, let them watch. But from now on, we control what they see. Tony hesitated, then nodded slowly. You think it's her, don't you? Miranda. Domenico looked at the camera in Tony's hand. The one from above his bed, the place where he was supposed to be most vulnerable, most human. I don't know, he said quietly. But I'm going to find out. Dawn broke gray and cold over Manhattan. Domenico hadn't changed his clothes from the night before. He'd spent the last 4 hours reviewing security footage, financial records, and trying to remember every conversation he'd had in his penthouse over the past 6 months. Everything felt contaminated now. At 6:15 a.m., he took the elevator down to the lobby. The morning shift was just starting, bellhops wheeling luggage carts, front desk staff brewing coffee, cleaners pushing their supply carts toward the service corridors. He spotted Ivy immediately. She was near the service door, talking to another janitor, her gray uniform identical to yesterday's. When she saw Domenico walking toward her, she didn't run. Didn't even look surprised. The other janitor, an older woman with silver hair, took one look at Domenico's face and found somewhere else to be. Mr. Vero, Ivy said evenly. We need to talk. Domenico gestured toward a quiet corner near the unused conference rooms.
Now.
She followed him without protest. They stopped in an alcove where the lobby noise faded to a distant hum. Domenico crossed his arms. You knew there were cameras. Plural. Didn't you? I suspected, Ivy said. People who use one don't usually stop at one. We found 2 more. One at my desk. One at the liquor cabinet. Ivy nodded like he'd just confirmed something she'd already known. Whoever placed them wanted documentation. Not just of your private life, of your business. You said you used to clean for people who installed these. Domenico stepped closer. Stop being vague. Give me names. Ivy's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. A flicker of something. Hesitation? Fear? She glanced past him at the lobby, checking who might be watching. I worked for a cleaning service in Connecticut 3 years ago, she said quietly. High-end homes. Estates. The kind of places where you sign an NDA before you vacuum the carpets. And one of the families I cleaned for was the Russos. The name hit Domenico like a punch to the gut.
Russo.
Miranda's family. Ivy continued, her voice steady. I worked at their mansion for 8 months. During that time, I saw cameras everywhere. Not security cameras, hidden ones. In guest bedrooms. In closets. Even in the bathroom mirrors.
They weren't protecting themselves.
They were collecting information on everyone who walked through their doors. Domenico's mind raced. He'd been to the Russo mansion dozens of times. He'd stayed overnight. He'd taken business calls in their guest rooms. Why? He asked. Insurance. Ivy said the word like it tasted bitter. That's what the housekeeper called it. Mrs. Russo liked to know things about people. Private things. She said it kept relationships honest. Honest, Domenico almost laughed. That's one word for it. I quit after I found a camera in the room where their daughter's friends would change clothes during pool parties. These girls were 17, 18 years old. When I confronted the family about it, they offered me $50,000 to forget what I'd seen. Did you take it? No, Ivy's eyes hardened. I walked out that same day. Moved to New York a week later. I thought I'd left all that behind. Domenico studied her face. She wasn't lying. He'd spent 2 decades reading people, and Ivy Sorrentino had the exhausted honesty of someone who'd seen something ugly and couldn't unsee it. Miranda's brother, Ivy said.
Nicola Russo.
He was the one who installed most of the cameras. He has a tech background, studied computer engineering at MIT before he joined the family business. He'd brag about how sophisticated his systems were. Said nobody could ever trace them back to him.
Nicola.
Domenico had met him a dozen times. Quiet guy. Polite. Always smiled, always shook hands, always said the right things. Miranda adored him. Called him her protector. You're telling me my fiancé's family has been spying on me, Domenico said slowly. I'm telling you that the cameras in your penthouse are the same model, same placement strategy, same encryption signature as the ones I saw in the Russo mansion 3 years ago. You can believe me or not. That's up to you. Domenico pulled out his phone. On the screen was a photo Tony had sent him an hour ago. Ivy's background check. Clean record. No criminal history.
No suspicious connections.
She'd worked 3 janitorial jobs in the past 2 years. Always showed up on time. Never caused problems. Nobody important. Nobody dangerous. Exactly the kind of person people forgot about. Why help me? Domenico asked. You could have kept quiet. Finished your shift. Avoided all of this. Ivy looked away. Because I've seen what happens when people like the Russos collect footage. They don't just keep it in a drawer. Eventually, they use it. And when they do, they destroy lives. Domenico slipped his phone back into his pocket. I'm sending you home.
Take the day off.
Paid. I don't need. It's not a request. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a hotel keycard, the one Tony had deactivated an hour ago and replaced with a dummy.
He handed it to Ivy.
Your access badge still works. If you need to reach me, use the service entrance.
Don't call.
Don't text. Ivy took the card, confusion crossing her face. Why are you trusting me?
I'm not, Domenico said.
But right now, you're the only person who's been honest with me. That counts for something. He walked away, leaving Ivy standing in the alcove. His phone buzzed. A text from Miranda. Brunch today? My place? Miss your face. Red heart. Domenico stared at the message. Then he typed back. See you at noon. It was time to visit the Russo mansion. The Russo estate sat on 12 acres in Westchester County, hidden behind iron gates and manicured hedges that looked like they'd been trimmed with surgical precision. Domenico had always hated this place. Too clean. Too perfect. Like a museum where rich people pretended to be happy. He pulled his black Mercedes up the circular driveway at exactly noon. Miranda was waiting on the front steps, wearing a cream-colored sundress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight perfectly. She looked like something out of a magazine. Baby. She practically floated down the steps and wrapped her arms around his neck. I missed you so much. Domenico returned the embrace, but his eyes scanned the mansion's facade. How many cameras were watching them right now? Missed you too, he said, the lie smooth on his tongue. Miranda pulled back, studying his face. You look exhausted. Miami was that bad. Just long. You know how suppliers get when they think they have leverage. Well, you're home now. She linked her arm through his and guided him toward the house. I had chef make your favorite, that pasta thing with the truffle oil you love. The interior of the mansion was exactly as Domenico remembered. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of dead Russo staring down from the walls. Everything expensive. Everything cold. Miranda's mother, Constance Russo, was arranging white roses in a vase in the foyer. She looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes.
Domenico.
How wonderful to see you. Mrs. Russo, he nodded politely. Please, darling, we've been over this. Call me Constance. She adjusted a rose with meticulous precision. Miranda's been counting down the minutes until you arrived. I was not, Miranda laughed, swatting her mother's arm playfully. Don't embarrass me. They moved through the house toward the dining room. Domenico's trained eyes caught details he'd never noticed before. The decorative molding. Perfect place to hide a lens. The antique mirror in the hallway. Two-way glass. The smoke detector in the corner. Looked newer than the others. Ivy's voice echoed in his mind. Cameras everywhere. Brunch was set up on the terrace overlooking the gardens. White tablecloth, fine china, champagne chilling in a silver bucket. Everything staged. Everything performance. Miranda's father, Gerald Russo, joined them 10 minutes later. Tall, silver-haired, with a kind of smile politicians practiced in mirrors. He shook Domenico's hand with just the right amount of pressure. Good to see you, son. How's business? Steady, Domenico said carefully. Steady is good. Steady is reliable. Gerald poured himself champagne. In uncertain times, reliability is everything. They ate. They talked about weather, about mutual acquaintances, about the wedding plans that Miranda had been refining for months. Everything pleasant. Everything surface level.
Domenico waited.
Finally, as Miranda was describing the flower arrangements for the reception, Domenico said casually, Strangest thing happened at the penthouse last night. Miranda looked up from her pasta. Oh. Found some technical issues with the security system. Had to bring in a team to sweep everything. He watched her face carefully. No reaction. Just polite curiosity. Technical issues? She asked.
Yeah.
Weird glitches in the wiring. Equipment that shouldn't be there. He paused, letting the words hang. The team said someone had to physically install it. Pretty sophisticated work. Gerald's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second. Then continued. Well, that's unsettling, Miranda said, her voice laced with concern. Did they figure out what caused it? Still investigating. Miranda reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Baby, that sounds stressful. Maybe you should stay here tonight? You'd sleep better away from the hotel. Domenico met her eyes.
Clear blue.
Innocent. Worried. I appreciate that, he said. But I need to be there. Can't let something like this chase me out of my own place. Of course not, she smiled. You're too stubborn for that. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Domenico noticed something. Miranda kept glancing at her phone, screen down on the table. 3 times in 20 minutes. Quick looks. Nervous energy. After brunch, Miranda walked him back to his car while her parents disappeared inside. Are you okay? She asked, wrapping her arms around his waist. You seem distant. Just tired, Domenico said. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Her voice was soft, vulnerable. If something's wrong, I want to help. He looked down at her. This woman he'd proposed to 8 months ago. This woman who'd integrated herself into every corner of his life with perfect grace and calculated charm. Dom. Seriously, her brow furrowed. You're scaring me. Did something happen in Miami? Are you in trouble?
Hai fine, Miranda.
You're not fine. You're paranoid, she pulled back slightly. Staying in hotel rooms all the time. Never letting anyone get too close. Baby, this life you lead, it's making you spiral. Spiral. The word felt practiced. Rehearsed. I'm not spiraling, Domenico said evenly. Then what would you call showing up here acting like you're being watched? Miranda's voice cracked. Perfectly timed emotion. I'm worried about you. We're supposed to get married in 4 months, and you're pulling away from me. Domenico cupped her face in his hands, forcing himself to play the role she expected. I'm sorry, he said. You're right. I'm just stressed. I'll do better. Miranda's expression softened. Relief flooded her features. I just want you safe, baby. That's all I've ever wanted. She kissed him long, deep, like she was proving something. When she pulled away, Domenico saw it. Just for a fraction of a second before she turned toward the house. A smirk.
Small.
Satisfied. The kind of expression someone makes when they think they've won. She thought he hadn't seen it. But he had. Ivy's apartment was in a walk-up building in Queens, the kind of place where the radiator clanged at night and the neighbors spoke 5 different languages through paper-thin walls. She'd lived here for 18 months, long enough that the super knew her name, short enough that she still felt temporary. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor at 6:30 p.m., her shift at the hotel finally over. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. She wanted nothing more than to peel off her uniform, take a hot shower, and pretend the last 24 hours hadn't happened. But something was wrong. Her apartment door was ajar. Just slightly. Maybe an inch. Enough that she could see the darkness inside. Ivy's heart kicked into overdrive. She stood frozen in the hallway, her hand still on the railing. She tried to remember if she'd locked it this morning. She always locked it. Always. It was automatic. Key in, turn, test the handle. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over 911. But something stopped her. If someone had broken in to rob her, they would have kicked the door in. This was different. Deliberate. Controlled. She pushed the door open slowly. The apartment looked exactly as she'd left it. The small kitchen table with 1 chair. The futon she'd bought secondhand. The stack of library books on the floor. Nothing disturbed. Nothing taken. Nothing except her phone. It was sitting on the dresser, screen up, positioned perfectly in the center like someone had placed it there with purpose. Ivy's phone. The one she was currently holding in her hand. She walked closer, her breath shallow. It was her old phone. The one she'd replaced 3 months ago after the screen cracked. She'd kept it in the bottom drawer of her dresser, meaning to wipe it and recycle it, but never getting around to it. Someone had gone through her things. Found it. Powered it on. The screen was lit with a message in the Notes app. 3 words in capital letters. Stay quiet.
No signature. No explanation.
Just those 2 words, glowing in the dim light of her apartment. Ivy's hands trembled. She looked around the room again. No signs of forced entry. The window was locked from the inside. The fire escape untouched. Whoever had been here had a key or knew how to pick a lock so cleanly it left no trace. Professional. She grabbed the phone and checked the last activity. The note had been created at 2:47 p.m., while she was still at work, surrounded by witnesses, safely away from here. They'd wanted her to know they could reach her. Anytime. Anywhere. Ivy sat on the edge of her futon, staring at the message. Her mind raced through possibilities. The Russos. It had to be. She'd given Domenico their name this morning, and by afternoon, someone had been inside her home. They were faster than she'd expected. She thought about Domenico's offer, the key card, the access, the implicit protection. But protection from whom? A mafia boss was offering safety from a family of millionaire socialites who probably donated to children's hospitals and posed for magazine covers. Except those were the most dangerous kind. Ivy knew what the Russos were capable of. She'd seen it 3 years ago when she tried to confront them about the cameras. They didn't threaten. They didn't raise their voices. They smiled, offered money, and made it clear that refusing would have consequences. She'd taken the smart route back then, walked away, moved cities, started over. But she'd made a mistake yesterday. She'd spoken up. She'd involved herself in something that wasn't her business, all because she couldn't watch another person get trapped in the Russos' web. And now they knew she was a problem. Ivy stood and walked to her window. The street below was quiet. A few pedestrians, a bodega on the corner, a bus rumbling past. Normal life. The kind of life she'd been trying to build. Simple. Invisible. Safe. That was over now. She grabbed a backpack from her closet and started packing. Essentials only, clothes, toiletries, the cash she kept hidden in a coffee can under the sink. Not running, she told herself. Just being prepared. Ready to move if things got worse. Her real phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You have a choice. Walk away from Domenico Vero and forget everything you saw. Or keep talking and find out what happens to people who interfere in family matters. Ivy's jaw tightened. No question who'd sent it. She typed back, I don't know what you're talking about. The response came within seconds. Yes, you do. This is your only warning, Ivy. We know where you live. We know where you work. We know where your mother lives in Newark. Stay quiet, or everyone you love pays the price. Her mother. They'd brought up her mother. Ivy deleted the message thread with shaking hands. Then she grabbed her packed bag, turned off the lights, and walked out of her apartment. She didn't know where she was going. Not home. Not to friends. She didn't have many, and she wouldn't put them at risk. Maybe a motel. Maybe the 24-hour diner 3 blocks away, where she could sit in a corner booth and think. As she descended the stairs, she pulled out the hotel keycard Domenico had given her. The dummy one he'd said would still work. She'd thought he was being paranoid. Now she understood. In Domenico's world, paranoia wasn't a weakness. It was survival. And Ivy Sorrentino had just learned she was playing in that world now, whether she wanted to or not. The question was, did she disappear like she did 3 years ago? Or did she fight back? The warehouse sat in Red Hook, Brooklyn, tucked between abandoned shipping containers and a waterfront that smelled like rust and diesel. Domenico had owned the building for 12 years, one of a dozen properties he used for meetings that couldn't happen in public. Tonight, he'd called in his inner circle. Tony Marcello arrived first, followed by 3 lieutenants Domenico had worked with since the beginning: Vincent Vinny Calabrese, who handled logistics, Marcus Chun, who managed their digital operations, and Rachel Dominguez, who oversaw legal affairs and had a law degree from Columbia she'd never officially practiced. They sat around a metal table under flickering fluorescent lights.
No phones.
No recording devices. Just 5 people who trusted each other with their lives. Domenico placed the 3 cameras on the table. These were in my penthouse, he said. 1 above my bed. 1 at my desk. 1 at the liquor cabinet. Vinny leaned forward, examining them.
Jesus.
When? We don't know exactly. Sometime in the last 6 months. Marcus picked up one of the cameras, turning it over in his hands. His expertise was cybersecurity. He'd been a hacker before Domenico recruited him 8 years ago.
Najtaj prosedm.
High-end surveillance. Military-grade encryption. Whoever planted these knew exactly what they were doing. Can you trace them? Domenico asked. Already started. Marcus pulled out a tablet. All 3 devices connect to a private encrypted relay. The signal bounces through servers in 3 different countries, Switzerland, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands, before reaching the final destination. Which is? Still working on it. But here's what's interesting. Marcus swiped through data on his screen. These cameras don't just record. They stream live and archive everything automatically. We're talking hundreds of hours of footage stored somewhere in the cloud. Rachel crossed her arms. That's not surveillance. That's evidence collection. Exactly, Marcus looked at Domenico. Whoever's doing this isn't watching you for entertainment. They're building a file. The implications settled over the room like fog. Domenico had spent 20 years being careful. Every conversation calculated. Every transaction documented only in his head. He'd avoided federal indictment 3 times because he never left evidence. But if someone had months of footage, conversations with suppliers, meetings with politicians, cash exchanges, strategic planning sessions, they could bury you, Tony said quietly. Hand that footage to the feds, and you'd be in federal prison by next month. Or they could release it to the council, Vinny added. The council, 5 family heads who controlled different territories across the East Coast. Domenico answered to them, but barely. If they see you as compromised, they'll vote you out. Or worse. Or, Rachel said, her voice sharp, they could use it for something more profitable. Blackmail. Leverage. Think about it, they have footage of Domenico with people in power. Judges. Congressmen. Police commissioners. Those people would pay anything to keep that quiet. Marcus nodded. This isn't just about destroying Domenico. It's about controlling everyone in his orbit.
Domenico stayed silent, processing.
3 different ways this footage could be weaponized. 3 different catastrophes waiting to happen. Who do you think planted them? Rachel asked.
Domenico hesitated.
Then, the Russos. The name landed like a hammer. Your fiancé's family? Vinny's eyes widened. Dom, are you sure? The janitor, who found the first camera, she used to work for them. She said they used these exact cameras in their mansion. Same model. Same placement strategy. And Miranda's brother, Nicola, has the technical background to pull this off. Tony rubbed his jaw. But why? What do they gain? Control, Rachel said immediately. Miranda marries into Domenico's world, and suddenly the Russos have leverage over one of the most powerful operators on the East Coast. They could use that footage to influence deals, redirect territory, manipulate policy. Or to take over, Marcus added. Get rid of Domenico, inherit his operation through Miranda, and absorb everything he's built into their empire. Domenico had considered all of this, lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, knowing cameras were watching him. The Russos played a different game than he did. They smiled at charity events and shook hands with senators. They didn't get their hands dirty. They just collected enough dirt on everyone else to never need to. There's something else, Marcus said, swiping to a new screen. I did some digging into the Russo family finances. In the last 2 years, they've made significant investments in private security firms, data storage companies, and, get this, a tech startup that specializes in encrypted cloud archiving. They're building infrastructure, Rachel said. Not just for surveillance, but for permanent storage and distribution. How many people do you think they have footage on? Vinny asked. Marcus shrugged. Could be dozens. Could be hundreds. If they've been doing this for years. It's a blackmail empire, Tony finished. Hidden behind charity galas and country clubs. The room fell silent. Domenico stood and walked to the warehouse window overlooking the water. Ships moved slowly across the harbor, tiny lights in the darkness. If we expose them, he said quietly, we have to expose everything. The cameras, the footage, the entire operation. That means admitting I was surveilled. That means showing vulnerability. In your world, vulnerability gets you killed, Rachel said. I know. But if we don't expose them, Tony countered, they own you forever. Every decision you make, they'll have leverage over. That's worse than death, Dom. Domenico turned back to face his team. Find out where that footage is stored. Every server, every backup, every copy. I want locations. And then? Marcus asked. Then we decide whether to burn it all down or use it against them first. Domenico chose a coffee shop in the East Village, far from his usual territory. The kind of place with mismatched furniture, indie music playing too loud, and college students typing screenplays on ancient laptops. Nobody here knew his name or his face. He texted Ivy from a burner phone tomorrow.
10 Uhr morgens.
Corner of 7th and Avenue B. Come alone. She'd responded within minutes. Okay. Now it was 9:58 a.m., and Domenico sat at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. He'd arrived early, scoped the exits, checked for anyone who might be watching. Old habits. Ivy walked in at exactly 10 a.m. She looked different out of her janitor uniform, jeans, a worn leather jacket, dark hair down around her shoulders. She carried a backpack that looked too full, like she'd packed for a quick escape. She spotted him immediately and walked over without hesitation. Mr. Vero, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Just Domenico. He pushed a cup of coffee toward her. Black, no sugar, the way she'd been drinking it in the hotel break room when he'd observed her from security footage last night. You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. Ivy wrapped her hands around the cup, but didn't drink. Someone broke into my apartment yesterday. Domenico's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. They hurt you?
No.
They left a message on my phone. Told me to stay quiet. Mention my mother by name. She met his eyes. They're faster than I expected. The Russos don't waste time when they identify a threat. Is that what I am now? A threat? You became a threat the moment you pointed out that first camera. Domenico leaned back in his chair. But you already knew that. Ivy finally took a sip of coffee. Her hands were steady, but Domenico noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. This woman had been running on adrenaline for 2 days. I need to know everything, Domenico said quietly. Not just about the cameras. About the Russo mansion. About how they operate. Every detail you remember. Ivy set down her cup.
Why?
So you can what? Take them down? These aren't people you can intimidate, Domenico. They own half the judges in Connecticut. Their family has been untouchable for 3 generations. Nothing's untouchable. You just need to know where to apply pressure. And you think I know where that is. I think you saw things while you were in that house. Things they didn't know you noticed. Ivy was quiet for a moment, staring at her coffee. Then she started talking. The mansion has 43 rooms, she said. I know because I cleaned every one of them. But there are cameras in only 12 specific locations. Guest bedrooms where important people stayed. The study where Gerald conducts business. The sitting room where Constance hosts her charity committee meetings. The pool house where their kids brought dates. Strategic placement, Domenico said. Exactly. They're not paranoid. They're methodical. Every camera serves a purpose, collecting leverage on someone specific. Ivy pulled a small notebook from her jacket. I kept a list. Couldn't help myself. Occupational hazard of being observant. She slid the notebook across the table. Domenico opened it. Inside were detailed sketches, floor plans of the Russo mansion, marked with X's indicating camera locations. Notes in small, neat handwriting. Guest room 3. Senator Whitmore stayed here March 2022.
Camera in closet ceiling.
Guest room 5. Judge Patterson, April 2022. Camera behind bathroom mirror.
Jesus, Domenico mattered.
You documented everything. I was going to take it to the police, Ivy said. But then I realized, who would believe a janitor over the Russos? They'd bury me. So, I kept the notebook as insurance. Proof I wasn't crazy. Domenico flipped through the pages. There were at least 20 entries. Politicians, business executives, family friends. All unknowingly recorded. The bathroom mirrors, he said. How did they hide cameras there? Two-way glass. Nicola designed them himself. From the outside, they look like normal mirrors. From behind, they have a clear view of everything. He was proud of it. He called it his masterpiece. Domenico felt bile rise in his throat. And nobody ever noticed. Why would they? You trust the people you're visiting. You don't check for cameras in your friend's bathroom. Ivy's voice was bitter. That's what makes the Russos so dangerous. They weaponize hospitality. Where does Nicola store the footage? Private server farm. I heard him mention it once to his father, said it was housed in a facility upstate, completely off-grid. Climate-controlled, biometric security, the works. He said even if someone raided the mansion, they'd never find the archives. Domenico's mind raced. A server farm. Physical location. That was vulnerable in ways cloud storage wasn't. You said Miranda never watches the footage herself, he said. She doesn't need to. Her job is different. Ivy leaned forward. She's the collector. She gets close to people, dates them, befriends them, marries them, and once they're comfortable, the cameras go in. She's done it before.
Domenico froze.
What? You're not her first engagement. Ivy's voice was soft, almost apologetic. 3 years ago, she was engaged to a real estate developer named Thomas Keating. 6 months before the wedding, he suddenly sold his company at a huge loss and moved to Europe. Nobody knew why. The rumor among the staff was that the Russos had footage of him doing something illegal. They gave him a choice: sell and disappear or go to prison. The coffee shop noise faded to white noise. Domenico thought about Miranda's face yesterday. The perfect concern. The practiced emotion. The smirk she thought he hadn't seen. She played me from the beginning, he said quietly. She plays everyone, Ivy said. That's her role in the family business. Domenico closed the notebook and slid it back across the table. Keep it, Ivy said. You'll need it more than I will. What are you going to do? Ivy picked up her backpack. Disappear. Like I should have done 2 days ago. They'll find you. Maybe. But at least I tried to do the right thing first. She stood to leave. Ivy, Domenico said. She turned back. Thank you. She nodded once, then walked out of the coffee shop and disappeared into the morning crowd. Domenico sat alone, the notebook in front of him, surrounded by strangers drinking overpriced lattes. For the first time in 20 years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten.
Rage.
Domenico returned to his hotel at noon with Ivy's notebook burning a hole in his jacket pocket. He didn't go to his penthouse. Instead, he took the service elevator to the basement level where the hotel's security operations were housed. Tony was already there, along with Marcus and 2 members of his tech team. They'd commandeered one of the auxiliary security rooms, a cramped space filled with monitors, servers, and the smell of stale coffee. Tell me you found something, Domenico said, closing the door behind him. Marcus looked up from his laptop, exhaustion written across his face. We traced the signal. The footage from your penthouse is being relayed to a private server in Ulster County, place called Shadowbrook Data Solutions. It's registered as a corporate backup facility, but the ownership is buried under 6 layers of shell companies. The Russos. Can't prove it yet, but the timing matches. The facility was built 4 years ago, right when the Russos started making those tech investments I mentioned. Domenico pulled out Ivy's notebook and dropped it on the table. The janitor kept records. Detailed floor plans of the Russo mansion. Every camera location. Every person they've surveilled. Tony flipped through the pages, his expression darkening with each entry. This is enough to bring federal charges.
Wiretapping, illégale surveillance, extorsion.
It's enough if we can prove the footage exists, Domenico interrupted. Right now, it's just a janitor's notebook. Her word against a family with unlimited legal resources. So we need the actual footage, Marcus said. And we need to understand the full scope of their operation. Domenico turned to one of the tech specialists. Can you replicate how they installed these cameras without triggering the hotel's security systems? The specialist, a young woman named Sarah with purple streaks in her hair, nodded. I've been reviewing your building's security protocols. There's a 12-minute window during maintenance cycles when the cameras in the service corridors go dark for software updates. It happens every Tuesday at 2 a.m. That's when they installed them, Tony said. Someone with access to the maintenance schedule. Someone on the inside, Domenico agreed. He thought about the past 6 months. Miranda had visited the penthouse at least twice a week. She had her own keycard. She knew his schedule, his habits, when he'd be traveling. There's something else, Sarah said, pulling up a schematic on her monitor. The camera placement in your penthouse is surgical, not voyeuristic, strategic. The bedroom camera captures you at your most vulnerable. The desk camera documents your business dealings. The liquor cabinet camera records your private meetings. They're not watching me, Domenico said slowly. They're documenting specific scenarios. Exactly, Sarah zoomed in on the bedroom camera's field of view. This angle wouldn't capture anything intimate. It's positioned to show who comes and goes, who you meet with privately, conversations you think are secret. Marcus pulled up another file. I analyzed the metadata from the cameras. They're motion-activated, but they're also programmed with facial recognition triggers. Specific people walking into frame would start recording automatically. Who? Domenico asked. Marcus brought up a list of names. Based on the algorithm parameters, I'd say politicians, law enforcement officials, business competitors, anyone who'd be valuable to have on record. It's an automated blackmail machine, Tony muttered.
Jesus Christ.
Domenico walked to the monitors, showing the feed from his penthouse. The cameras were still live, still transmitting. He'd been careful since discovering them, conducting no important meetings, having no sensitive conversations. But how much had they already captured? I want to bring someone in, he said suddenly. Tony looked up. Who? The janitor. Ivy Sorrentino. Dom. She's a civilian. She's someone who's been inside the Russo mansion. Someone who understands their system intimately. Domenico pulled out his burner phone. And right now, she's running scared with nowhere to go. We can offer protection in exchange for her expertise. You trust her? Marcus asked. Domenico thought about Ivy's steady voice in the coffee shop. The exhaustion in her eyes. The notebook she'd kept for 3 years, waiting for someone to believe her. More than I trust anyone associated with the Russos, he said. He sent a text, need your help. Protection and payment in exchange for consultation. Your choice. The response came 10 minutes later. Where? Ivy arrived at the hotel service entrance 2 hours later, escorted by Tony. She looked even more tired than this morning, but her eyes were alert, scanning the basement corridor like she was memorizing exits. Domenico led her to the security room. She froze when she saw the monitors, the equipment, the team assembled. This is real, she said quietly. Very real. Domenico gestured to the cameras on the table. Show them how the Russos install these without leaving traces. Ivy set down her backpack and picked up one of the cameras. Her hands moved with surprising confidence, flipping it over, examining the mounting mechanism. The adhesive is industrial grade, but it's designed to be removable, she explained to the team. You heat it with a hairdryer for 30 seconds, and it peels off clean.
No residuo.
No damage. That's why they can remove them before anyone notices. Sarah leaned forward, so they could be installing and removing cameras constantly. In the Russo mansion, they rotated them every 3 months. New guests meant new placements. Ivy pointed to the lens. These cameras have a 45-day battery life with continuous use. After that, they need to be retrieved and recharged. Meaning someone has to physically access Domenico's penthouse regularly, Marcus said. Someone he trusts, Tony added, looking at Domenico. The implication hung heavy in the air. Miranda. Ivy pulled out her notebook and opened it to a specific page. The Russos have a protocol. 3 phases: installation, documentation, and leverage. Right now, Domenico, you're in the documentation phase. They're collecting everything they can. But soon, they'll move to leverage, Domenico finished. Usually happens right before a major life event. A wedding. A business merger. Something that locks you in. Ivy met his eyes. Once you're married to Miranda, your family. And in the Russo family, nobody leaves. Domenico stared at the monitors showing his empty penthouse. Then we need to move first, he said. Before the wedding. Before they can use whatever they've collected.
How? Tony asked.
Domenico turned to Marcus. Find me everything about that server facility in Ulster County. Blueprints, security systems, access points. Everything. You're going to raid it? I'm going to destroy it, Domenico said quietly. Every camera, every file, every piece of leverage they have gone. And Miranda? Tony asked carefully. Domenico's expression hardened. She's about to learn that some people can't be controlled. 3 days passed in careful silence. Domenico played the role of oblivious fiancé perfectly, texting Miranda's sweet nothings, attending a gallery opening with her, smiling for photos that would appear in society columns. Meanwhile, Marcus worked 20-hour days tracing server locations, and Tony assembled a team for what Domenico was planning. Then, on the 5th day, everything changed. A man named Felix Ortega reached out through one of Domenico's intermediaries. Felix was a broker, the kind who traded in things that didn't officially exist. Information. Secrets. Access to people and places that shouldn't be accessed. The message was simple. Have something you'd want to see. Private.
Urgent.
They met in a parking garage in Midtown at 11 p.m. Felix arrived in a 15-year-old Honda, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. He was thin, mid-40s, with the nervous energy of someone who'd seen too much and couldn't unsee it. Domenico arrived with Tony. No one else. Felix had insisted. Mr. Vero, Felix said, his voice shaky. Thank you for meeting me. You have 2 minutes, Domenico said. Make them count. Felix pulled out a tablet, hands trembling. 3 days ago, someone approached me through encrypted channels. They wanted to sell something, described it as premium private recordings of high-value targets they claimed to have footage of politicians, business executives, law enforcement officials. Domenico's pulse quickened. Go on. I told them I'd need to verify the merchandise before committing to a price. They sent me metadata files, not the actual footage, just file names, timestamps, location tags. Felix swiped through screens on his tablet. There are hundreds of files, maybe thousands, all organized by subject name and date. He turned the tablet toward Domenico. The screen showed a spreadsheet. Rows and rows of entries.
Vairo-Basso-Domenico-Basso-Bedroom-Basso-08-38-2024-224-7HRS.
Vero_Domenico_Office_Office_09-0-3-2024-1432
Patterson_Geraldi_Gestron5_0412202-03122022-2315
Whitmore_Study_Mansion_0-3-28-2022-1856 Domenico's blood went cold. His name, his locations, dates and times matching exactly when he'd been in his penthouse. How much? He asked quietly. 8 figures. Felix swallowed hard. Starting bid was 10 million, but they said for the right buyer, they'd go higher. This isn't just blackmail material, Mr. Vero. This is a nuclear weapon. Who's selling? Anonymous seller. But the delivery instructions specified a server transfer from a facility upstate, Ulster County. They're not physically handing over drives. They're transferring access credentials to a private server. The same server Marcus had traced. Shadowbrook Data Solutions. Tony leaned closer. Did they say when the sale closes? 72 hours from their initial contact. That was 3 days ago, which means they're selling tomorrow, Domenico finished. Felix nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Vero, I swear I didn't know this involved you until I saw the metadata. I never would've. Who else have they contacted? I don't know. But if they're reaching out to brokers like me, they're casting a wide net. Someone's going to buy this. And once it's out there, Felix trailed off. Once it was out there, Domenico's entire operation would be exposed. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment of vulnerability captured in high definition and ready to be weaponized. The metadata, Domenico said. Send it to me. Everything you have. Felix's hands shook as he transferred the files to a secure email. Mr. Vero, these people, whoever they are, they're not amateurs. The level of organization, the scope of surveillance, the infrastructure required. I know who they are, Domenico said coldly. Then you know they won't stop. Even if you shut down this sale, they'll be stopped. Domenico's voice was ice. Permanently. Felix nodded quickly, desperate to end this conversation. Is there anything else you need from me?
Yeah.
You never saw this metadata. You never had this conversation. And if anyone asks if you've heard about recordings being sold, you know nothing. Of course. Absolutely. Felix practically ran back to his Honda. Tony waited until the car disappeared down the ramp before speaking. They're trying to sell it before the wedding. Get the money and disappear before you realize what's happening. Or they're testing the market, Domenico said. Seeing who bites. Once they know who's interested, they have more leverage. Either way, we're out of time. Domenico pulled out his phone and called Marcus. How close are you to getting those Shadowbrook blueprints? I have them, Marcus said. But Dom, the security is insane. Biometric scanners, armed guards, redundant systems. I don't care if it's Fort Knox. We're going in tomorrow night. Tomorrow? That's not enough time to. It has to be. They're selling the footage in 72 hours, which means the servers are live and accessible right now. If we wait, someone buys it, and we lose our window. There was silence on the other end. Then, okay. I'll have a plan ready by morning. Domenico hung up and stared out at the city lights. Tony cleared his throat. What about Miranda? If we hit the server facility, she'll know we're coming for her. Good. Domenico said. Let her know. And the wedding. There isn't going to be a wedding. Tony studied his boss's face, the man he'd worked with for 15 years, the man who'd built an empire through calculated restraint and strategic patience. That man was gone. In his place was someone Tony had only seen a handful of times. Someone dangerous. We're going to war with the Russos, Tony said. It wasn't a question. We're going to end them, Domenico corrected. There's a difference. He walked toward his car, already planning. The server facility. The footage. The evidence that could destroy not just him, but dozens of powerful people whose secrets the Russos had collected like trophies. Tomorrow night, it would all burn. And Miranda Russo would finally understand what it meant to surveil a predator. Domenico changed the plan. He woke up at 5 a.m. with a realization that made his previous strategy look like amateur hour. Raiding the server facility would destroy the evidence, but it would also let the Russos disappear into their world of lawyers and deniability. They'd claim ignorance, blame rogue employees, use their connections to dodge consequences.
No.
This required something different. Public exposure. Undeniable. Inescapable. The annual Metropolitan Foundation Gala was tonight, the biggest charity event of the season. 600 guests. Every society page photographer in the city. Live streaming to donors across the country. And Miranda had insisted they attend together. Told him it was important for their public image as a couple.
Perfect.
Domenico called Marcus at 6 a.m. Change of plans. I need a presentation ready by tonight. Every camera location, every metadata file, every piece of evidence we have on the Russo surveillance operation. Make it airtight. A presentation? Marcus sounded confused. For who? For everyone. By noon, the pieces were in motion. Marcus had created a 40-slide presentation with documentation that would make federal prosecutors weep. Tony had arranged for a tech team to infiltrate the gala's AV system. Rachel had prepared legal documentation showing the chain of evidence. And Ivy, who'd been staying in a hotel room Domenico paid for, provided the final piece. Testimony. You want me to go on record? She asked when Domenico visited her that afternoon.
No.
I want you safe and far from this. But I need your notebook, your statement, everything you witnessed. It corroborates the technical evidence. Ivy handed over the notebook without hesitation. Destroy them, she said quietly. People like the Russos think they're untouchable because they smile in public and donate to museums. Show everyone what they really are. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, the grand ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and old money. Domenico arrived at 7 p.m. in a Tom Ford tuxedo, looking every bit the successful businessman. Miranda was already there, stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She saw him and her face lit up with that practiced joy he now recognized as performance. Baby. She glided over and kissed his cheek. You look incredible. So do you, he said, playing his role. They worked the room together. Shaking hands with senators, posing for photos with philanthropists, laughing at jokes from hedge fund managers. Miranda was in her element. Charming, graceful, the perfect partner. Domenico watched her closely. She touched his arm at exactly the right moments, laughed at exactly the right volume, made exactly the right comments to exactly the right people. She was surveillance in human form, recording, cataloging, building files on everyone in the room. At 8:30 p.m., dinner was served. Domenico sat at the head table beside Miranda, her parents across from them. Gerald Russo gave a toast about philanthropy and community. Everyone applauded. At 9 p.m., the auction began. Art pieces, vacation packages, exclusive experiences, all for charity, of course. At 9:47 p.m., Domenico stood up. Excuse me, he said to Miranda. I need to use the restroom. Hurry back, she whispered, squeezing his hand. He walked toward the bathroom but diverted to a service corridor where Tony was waiting with a laptop. We're in, Tony said. AV system is ours. Say the word. Domenico looked back toward the ballroom. He could hear the auctioneer's voice, the gentle murmur of 600 people who had no idea what was about to happen. "Do it," he said. Domenico returned to the ballroom just as the auction ended. The event coordinator took the stage to introduce the evening's final speaker, a prominent surgeon discussing medical research funding. But before the surgeon could reach the microphone, the lights dimmed. The massive screens flanking the stage, meant for displaying auction items, flickered to life. A slide appeared, "Private surveillance operation, the Russo family." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd.
Domenico stood.
Not rushing, not dramatic. Just standing calmly as every head in the room turned toward the screens. Miranda's hand gripped his arm. "Dom, what's—" The next slide appeared. A photo of one of the cameras, serial number clearly visible. Nightie Pro 7 surveillance device. Recovered from Domenico Vero penthouse. Installation date, approximately August 2024. The murmurs grew louder.
Geraldo Russo sotoed abruptly.
"What is this? Turn it off." But the presentation continued. Floor plans of the Russo mansion appeared, marked with red X's indicating camera locations. Then metadata files, hundreds of them, showing names, dates, locations. Senator Douglas Whitmore, Russo Mansion, Guest Room 5. Judge Gerald Patterson, Russo Mansion, Study. Police Commissioner Angela Torres, Russo Mansion, Pool House. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. "This is a lie."
Constance Russo sieked.
"Someone is trying to sabotage our family." The screens showed the next slide. Bank records linking the Russo family shell companies to Shadowbrook Data Solutions. Corporate filings. Server rental agreements. Everything traced back to them with mathematical precision. Miranda's face had gone white. She stood, pulling at Domenico's arm.
"Stop this.
"Please stop this." He looked down at her.
Why?
"Is it not all true?" "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His voice was loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You installed cameras in my home, in my bedroom, at my desk. You documented everything, my meetings, my conversations, my life, so your family could use it as leverage." "That's not, I didn't." Miranda's composure cracked like glass. "This is insane. You're paranoid, you're—" The final slide appeared. A video clip, grainy security footage from the Russo mansion, showing Nicola Russo carefully installing a camera behind a bathroom mirror while narrating to someone off-screen. Another one for the collection. Patterson will never know. The ballroom erupted. The ballroom descended into chaos. Reporters who'd been covering the gala suddenly had a real story. Camera flashes exploded like strobe lights. Security tried to cut the presentation feed, but Marcus had locked them out. The evidence kept cycling on the screens, impossible to ignore. Senator Whitmore stood, his face purple with rage. "Gerald, what the hell is this?" Judge Patterson was already on his phone, presumably calling lawyers. Police Commissioner Torres pushed through the crowd toward the Russos, her expression murderous. Miranda grabbed Domenico's face, forcing him to look at her. "Please. We can fix this. We can. Fix it." Domenico's voice was cold. "Like you fixed Thomas Keating? The developer you were engaged to before me? Did you give him the same speech before your family destroyed his life?" Her eyes widened. "How did you?" "I know everything, Miranda. Every camera. Every target. Every person your family has been surveilling for years." He pulled her hands away from his face. "You were never going to marry me. You were going to own me." "That's not true." Her voice cracked, and real tears, actual tears, started streaming down her face. "I love you. Everything I did was to protect us, to protect our future. By recording me while I slept?" She had no answer. Gerald Russo was trying to address the crowd, his politician's smile failing spectacularly. "This is a misunderstanding. A malicious attack by business rivals. Your son is on camera explaining how the surveillance system works," someone shouted. "Those files are fabricated. The serial numbers match devices registered to your shell companies." That was Rachel, Domenico's lawyer, standing near the back with a briefcase full of documentation. "I have the purchase orders. The shipping manifests. Everything. Constance Russo grabbed her husband's arm. We're leaving.
Now.
But when they tried to walk toward the exit, Police Commissioner Torres stepped into their path. Her husband, a federal prosecutor, was beside her, his phone pressed to his ear. Nobody leaves, Torres said, her voice sharp as a blade. Especially not you, Gerald. We're going to have a very long conversation about those cameras in your guest rooms. Angela, let's be reasonable. Reasonable? Torres stepped closer. You recorded me. In your home. Where my family stayed. Where my children swam in your pool. Her voice dropped to something dangerous. You weaponize hospitality. That's not business, Gerald. That's sociopathy. Nicola Russo tried to slip away through a side door, but Tony was there, blocking his path with two very large men who worked security for Domenico. Going somewhere? Tony asked pleasantly. Nicola's face went pale. Miranda was still standing beside Domenico, mascara running down her cheeks, her perfect facade completely shattered. People were staring, some with pity, most with disgust. How could you do this? She whispered. In front of everyone. You humiliated me. Domenico turned to face her fully. You installed cameras in my bedroom and you're talking about humiliation. I was trying to protect you. Her voice rose to a near scream. Do you have any idea how dangerous your world is? The enemies you have? I needed leverage to keep you safe. Safe. Domenico laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You weren't protecting me, Miranda. You were collecting ammunition. The moment our marriage became inconvenient, you'd have buried me with that footage. That's not. She reached for him again, desperate. Baby, please. We can leave.
Right now.
Go somewhere private and talk about this. I can explain. Explain what? That you're exactly like your family? That you've been running a surveillance operation disguised as a relationship. She flinched like he'd struck her. You want to know the worst part? Domenico continued, his voice quieter now. I might have actually loved you. The version of you that smiled over breakfast. The version that laughed at terrible movies. But that person never existed, did she? It was all performance. All surveillance. It wasn't all, Miranda's voice broke. Some of it was real. I swear to God, some of it was real. Domenico searched her face, looking for truth. But after 6 months of cameras and lies, how could he trust anything he saw there? It doesn't matter anymore, he said finally. Miranda's father was being led away by hotel security, still protesting his innocence. Her mother had disappeared, probably already on the phone with the family's crisis management team. Nicola was surrounded by people demanding answers. The Russo empire was collapsing in real time, and Miranda stood at the center of it, her silver gown now looking like funeral attire, her perfect image destroyed beyond repair. My father will disown me, she said quietly, almost to herself.
He'll blame me for this.
Say I was careless, that I let you get too close to the operation. Good, Domenico said. Maybe that'll teach you what it feels like to be used. She looked at him one last time. Really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. The desperation faded. The tears stopped. What remained was something colder. More honest. You think you've won, she said softly. But you just made yourself a target. My family might be finished, but their clients aren't. All those people whose secrets we collected? They paid for protection. And now you've exposed them. Domenico felt ice creep down his spine. What are you talking about? Miranda smiled, not her practiced socialite smile, but something sharper. The footage wasn't just insurance, Domenico. It was a service. People paid us to keep certain information buried. Now you've dragged it all into the light. Congratulations. You've just made enemies you can't even imagine. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving Domenico standing alone in the center of a ballroom full of people whose secrets he'd just helped expose. And for the first time since this started, he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The Plaza Hotel's private balcony overlooked Central Park, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the trees. It was nearly midnight. Inside, lawyers swarmed like sharks, Federal agents took statements, and what remained of New York's elite tried to figure out which side of this disaster they wanted to be on. Domenico stood alone, his bow tie undone, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He'd won. Technically. The Russo surveillance operation was exposed. Gerald would face federal charges. Nicola was already cooperating with prosecutors, cutting deals to save himself. The server facility in Ulster County had been raided by FBI agents within an hour of the gala ending. Hundreds of files seized. Dozens of powerful people compromised. But Miranda's final words echoed in his mind. "You've just made enemies you can't even imagine." Quite a show. Domenico turned. Ivy stood in the doorway, looking deeply uncomfortable in the formal surroundings. She wore the same jeans and leather jacket from days ago, completely out of place among the tuxedos and evening gowns. "How'd you get up here?" he asked. "Your guy Tony let me through. Said you might need someone to talk to who isn't a lawyer or a federal agent." Domenico gestured to the balcony railing. Ivy joined him, keeping a careful distance. "You did it," she said quietly. "The Russos are finished." "Maybe. Or maybe I just created a bigger problem," he told her about Miranda's warning. The clients who'd paid for protection. The secrets now exposed. Ivy was quiet for a long moment. She's not wrong. The people on those lists, politicians, judges, business executives, they all have resources. And they all know you're the one who exposed them. "I know. So, what are you going to do?" Domenico took a sip of whiskey, finally. "It burned. Same thing I've always done. Survive. Adapt. Make it clear that coming after me costs more than leaving me alone. That's not a plan. That's hope. Hope's gotten me this far." Ivy leaned against the railing, looking out at the park. "You know what's funny? In the Russo mansion, I was invisible. Just another cleaner moving through rooms, emptying trash, changing sheets. People talked around me like I wasn't even there. That's how I learned everything, by being so unimportant that no one bothered to hide." "You're not unimportant," Domenico said. "I know that now. But I spent 3 years believing I was. Believing the best thing I could do was stay quiet and invisible." She turned to face him. "You could have stayed invisible too. Could have lived with those cameras, played Miranda's game. Maybe even turned it to your advantage. But you didn't. You burned it all down in front of 600 people. Because I was angry." "No," Ivy shook her head. "Because you understood something the Russos never did. Power built on secrets is fragile. It only works as long as people are afraid of exposure. But once everything's already exposed, the power disappears." Domenico considered that. She was right. The Russos had controlled people through fear of what would happen if their secrets got out. But now those secrets were public. The leverage was gone. The power structure had collapsed. "You think I did the right thing?" he asked. "I think you did the only thing. For people like the Russos, compromise is just another form of control." The balcony door opened. Tony stepped out. "Dom, FBI wants another statement. And there's a reporter from the Times asking for comment. Tell them I'll give a statement tomorrow." Through Rachel. "No reporters tonight." Tony nodded and disappeared back inside. Ivy pushed off the railing. "I should go. This is your world, not mine." "Wait." Domenico reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Inside is a phone number. Secure line. If the Russos or anyone associated with them comes after you for testimony, intimidation, anything, you call that number. My people will handle it." Ivy took the envelope but didn't open it. "This feels like protection. And I told you what I think about protection." "It's not protection." Domenico met her eyes. "It's reciprocity. You showed me where the cameras were. This is me showing you where the exits are." She smiled, small, genuine. "That's better. What are you going to do now?" Ivy shrugged. "Find another cleaning job, probably. Maybe stay in New York, maybe move again. Depends on how much heat comes from all this. You could work for me. Not cleaning, consulting. I need people who can spot surveillance, who understand how the wealthy hide their crimes." "You offer me a job with the Mafia?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'm offering you a choice. keep being invisible, or use what you know to stop other people from becoming targets. Ivy was quiet for a moment, weighing it. Then, ask me again in 6 months. After the dust settles. After we see who comes for you and how you handle it. Fair enough. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Domenico, I think you're going to be okay. You're paranoid enough to see threats coming, but not so paranoid that you trust nobody. That's a rare combination. Is that a compliment? From someone who cleans hotel rooms for a living? Absolutely. She left. Domenico stood alone on the balcony again, watching the city that had just watched him destroy one of its most powerful families. Miranda was right about one thing. He'd made enemies tonight. Powerful people who'd spent fortunes keeping secrets that were now public knowledge. But he'd also sent a message. He couldn't be controlled, couldn't be leveraged, couldn't be turned into someone's insurance policy. And in a world where cameras hid in bedroom ceilings and bathroom mirrors, where hospitality was weaponized and relationships were surveillance operations, that message mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Impressive work tonight. Let's talk. A friend. Domenico deleted it without responding. He'd had enough of people who claimed to be friends while hiding cameras in the walls. From now on, if someone wanted his trust, they have to earn it the old-fashioned way, by showing their face, saying what they meant, and accepting that some things couldn't be recorded, archived, or used as leverage. They'd have to be human. He finished his whiskey, set the glass on the railing, and walked back inside. There were statements to give, lawyers to brief, and enemies to identify. But for the first time in 6 months, Domenico Vero wasn't being watched. And that felt like freedom.